Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about the final section in our executable, and that is the metadata section. Now, this is going to be a pretty short video because the metadata section isn't really that involved. So let's just get right into it. So we have our simple section validation check like we always do. We're looking for S meta, and that represents 0x06 in my programming language. So if we have that character, we're in the metadata section. Otherwise, we say the file may be corrupt. So once we do that, then now we have the metadata section. Oh wow, it's pretty short. Okay, so basically what we do is we have our typical stuff where we have an infinite for loop, we have our current flag, the characters that we ignore, we have our EOS or our end of section character. We also have our default. If it's none of these values, then we say corrupt file. And of course, at the very end, if the current flag is equal to an end of section, we break out of the infinite for loop and we return 0. So the concept of this is going to be, if we scroll all the way to the top, basically if we return 0 here, or if the process exe is not equal to 0, then we print out whatever the error message is if it's not empty, and then we return a result of whatever the value is, and then the user will see what the return value is. Otherwise, if it's equal to 0, we just skip over this and we process the executable and we keep on going. So that's pretty much everything that encompasses processing executable. So let's see how we do it in the metadata section. So we're going to have a character called data file. That represents the value of 0x2 seed. And if I go back, let's see. So we're going to need to create a data structure called source file. Now, I don't remember if we've gone over this before, so I'm just going to go over it just in case. So we're going to need to create a data structure of source file, which is going to contain both the name of the source file and a list of string of lines in that source file. The reason why we want to do this is because as we're getting exceptions, we want to be able to print out where those exceptions happened. This is kind of inspired by Python, so I kind of took the way Python handles errors and exceptions and prints them out to the console. I kind of took that concept and added it to my programming language. So basically, if you get an exception, you're not only going to get all of the functions that led up to that exception, the line that the function crashed on, as well as the file that it crashed on. You're also going to see physically where in the actual source code that the code broke. And it's been really helpful for me trying to figure out and fix bugs because I've pretty much been able to figure out how to fix the bug before I even get to the source code just by looking at the exception stack. So it's a really nice way of doing it. So we'll see that a little bit later once we start getting into talking about how to build our exception system. But you also want to create a init and free function, which just initializes and frees up all of the various different lines. And yeah, so once you do all of that, we want to initialize the source file. We want to set the name by getting a string from the executable. And then we want to check to see if the VM manifest is debug. If this is true, then that basically means that we're in the, or that the application is debuggable. So if the debug flag is set to true in the manifest, then we're all good to go. Once we have that, then we basically get a string of source file data, and we basically just get a giant string. So unlike other strings where in the name I just say get string, our actual source file data could have a plethora of different type of data characters in there, and we don't want to crash the executable by stopping at the wrong point and then thinking that we're at the end of the section for whatever reason. So I pass a size of the actual source file before we even process the string from that source file. So before we get all the data that pertains to that source file, I pass in the size, that way there's no errors. And then I do what's called parse source file. So once I get the string from the source file data, then I pass in the source file string and the source file data string. So that's going to be this data structure and then this string here. And what that's going to do is that's pretty much going to take the source file and just add every single line to it. So I'm going to go through the entire string here that I pass in, and I'm basically going to check to see if the current character is equal to a new line. If so, then I create a new line, initialize it, and then I add that last line that we just created equal to the current line as I'm kind of adding them in this new string here. So basically, the concept is every time there's a new line, you want to add that value to the lines list. And once we kind of finish that, basically what we want to do is we want to initialize the last line, because there's a good chance that the user may not have entered a new line at the end of the file. So we just want to make sure that we have that. Also, if the file is one line long, then literally we want to just be able to support that as well. It shouldn't be, but just in case, we initialize our final line and we set our final line equal to whatever the value in the line string is. And that's pretty much it. So once we kind of do all of that, then that's it. So we've pretty much gone through everything we need to know for how to process an executable. So this is really cool. So now we're at a pretty good point to where we can kind of stop. So on Monday, we're actually going to be talking about how to build an opcode system. And basically, we'll be talking about everything from how processors process instructions to how opcodes compact data to it's going to be a ton of stuff. I also recently created this opcode data structure, and I did it specifically for this tutorial series, and it makes processing opcodes a ton easier. The way that I used to do it before, it was a complete nightmare. So this way is a lot smoother and it alleviates a lot of bugs as well. So we'll get into what all this stuff is and how it works later on. But yeah, so definitely watch out for that video on Monday. So that's going to be it for today, guys. As usual, if you have any questions, as always, put them in the comment section below. And of course, if you guys would love to help support the channel, you can always head over to my GitHub repository at androidevcd/sharp. When you do, definitely watch, star, and fork this repository. That gives this language a lot more visibility and let other developers know this language exists. Also, if you guys are curious about what I do on a daily basis, you can head over to the remastered branch. I write some pretty decent commits, so you can kind of get a gist of what I've been up to without really having to look too much into the code. Also, if you're curious about maybe some of the stuff that I've done in the past to the language or stuff that I'm looking to add in the future, there's two main places, so you can head over to the projects section and click on roadmap. This is pretty much going to be all of the things that I'm looking to add to the language in the future. It's pretty sparse right now and there's not much stuff in here, but over time it will start to increase in size as I come up with more ideas, so on and so forth. So there's going to be that. There's also the docs folder, and the docs folder is pretty much going to contain the changeless file, which for the foreseeable future is going to represent all of the stuff that I've done in the past to the language. I don't think I'm going to add that to the roadmap because this is a lot of stuff that I added to the language, and I think it'd just be nice to have like a legacy file that contains all of the updates as a whole, just one kind of place where you can go to look at everything. So that's going to be it for today, guys. As usual, if you're new to the channel, definitely consider subscribing. And until next time, see you guys later.